So, equations of circles, we finally are getting something back that we can pretty much Desmos the whole thing. Now, some of this is so straightforward that I don't know that you will need to Desmos it, but you could. Now, it's not going to be as easy to Desmos on the notes because I don't have them in multiple choice format. But on the test, you are pretty much going to see all of these in multiple choice format. I might have a type-in box where I ask you to type in the center or the radius, but most of them will be multiple choice. So you should see there this equation, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And so those three letters in there besides the x and the y, so your h, your k, and your r are all going to be numbers. And the h and the k are the numbers that give you the center of the graph. If you guys remember back to what we did whenever we were shifting graphs up, down, left, right, flipping them upside down, all that transformation stuff, I know it's been a while since we looked at that. When something was inside of the parentheses, it went the opposite direction, right? Like if we want to move something left or right, we would do the opposite direction. Like if we move something right 2, we would put a minus 2 inside of the parentheses. That's how this works here. You've got a minus h and a minus k, but your center will be at positive h and positive k for that. And then r stands for your radius of the circle. So to look at what this looks like in a problem, if we look over here at this graph that we have, this graph has a center right here, and we can find the coordinates of that center. It would be at 1, negative 2. So 1, negative 2 would be our center for that graph. And to find our radius, we just have to count to the edge of the circle, right from the center to the edge. You can go up, down, left, right, doesn't matter. And that radius there for this circle is 3. So if I want to write the equation of this circle, it will look like this. I will have x minus 1 squared. So that positive 1 becomes a minus 1 here because it's going to be opposite direction. Plus y plus 2 squared equals the radius squared. And so normally you'll see this x minus 1 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 9. They'll go ahead and square that and put that number there. So the good news about this is that a lot of these are going to be multiple choice. You can do the whole thing from Desmos. Or if you're not doing the whole thing from Desmos, you can check your work really easily with Desmos to make sure what you have done is right. So, for example, on this one, if I pull up Desmos here, and let me erase this, just type in what I got there. I got x minus 1 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 9. And I get this graph right here. And I can just check to make sure my points are right. The center right there is at 1, negative 2. If you want to graph it, that kind of helps me to see that. You just put 1, negative 2 in that second line. So that center is right there at 1, negative 2. It has a radius of 3. This has a radius of 3, so that's the correct graph for that. Okay. Questions? Okay, so a lot of this, I probably wouldn't use Desmos for it if I were doing the problems, but you could always use Desmos to check your answers for these. So for example, with number 1, it asked me to write the equation of a circle with a center at 5, 3 and a radius of 2. That will look like this. X minus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 2 squared, but probably you're going to see that, go ahead and just make that 4 right there. You guys all right there? So opposite sign, in here with your x and your y. Over here is your radius squared. And again, I'm going to show you one more time so we make sure we know what's available to us here. That's weird. So if I type that in, x minus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4. It's going to graph this for me. The center was supposed to be at 5, 3, so if I put 5, 3, there that is, right there in the middle of that circle, I can see that does in fact have a radius of 2. So I can feel pretty good about my answer. Okay, questions there? All right, so I'm not going to necessarily do all of these right here. We're going to skip a few so we got plenty of time for our quiz. If I want to do number 2, who thinks this is, they got it? They can tell me what number 2 should be. What do you think? And what's that going to equal? 196. And 196 is just 14 squared, right? Beautiful. Love it. So opposite sign, radius squared. Now, we all felt like we were doing this really good in second period, and I told them we're going to skip 3. We went down to 4, and then we got it wrong. What's tricky about 4? What trick have they pulled on you? They said diameter. They even got me. I told the person they were right, and then I heard murmurings like, isn't that the diameter? So, diameter is 32. What do we really need to write the equation with circle? For this, radius, right? So it's always the radius squared, not the diameter squared. So our radius here would be 16. Okay, so that's a trick on this one. So Peyton, what would the equation look like for this one?
X plus 1 or x plus 0 squared. Then y plus 9 squared.
I'll let you get away with that plus 0 on the first one because it doesn't matter, right? Whether you do plus or minus with a 0. But it's got to be the opposite sign. So 9 squared, 256, which is 16 squared. Good. And you're probably going to see this. You could see that as x minus 0, but what you're probably going to see is just x squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 256. Because x plus 0 is just x, which is an x squared. So as far as like multiple choice goes, they're not usually going to put that plus 0 right there. Everybody okay so far? All right, let's skip down and try number 6. This one's a little bit trickier because your radius is not a number, it's the square root of 158. So, Sawyer, what would our equation, what do you think our equation would look like for number 6? Yes, it will be 12.6 squared. Do that in your calculator. Use the whole decimal though, don't round it off. You rounded some. It should just be 158, period. Yes. It does, yes. So whenever you're doing this, so you can type it into the calculator. If you type it into the calculator or Desmos, you know, you will have to do you can type it into the, so you got square root 158, you get this number, you copy it, you paste it, you square it, and that is because it rounded just a little bit, that point, that 1 at the end there. But if I have the square root of 158 and I square it, right? What do square roots and squares or do to each other? They cancel each other out, right? So this, when I do square root of 158 squared, it's just 158. So you can use the calculator to do it, but you don't have to. It'll just cancel there. Okay. Questions? All right, let's move on. Okay, you're definitely going to see. I did this last time. I don't know. Oh, wait, there it goes. Okay. I think, actually, I do know why. It's because I deleted some things that were supposed to pop up. Okay. All right, so you're definitely going to see some where they give you a graph, they ask you to choose the equation. There will be multiple choice, because for me to ask you to type in that equation is just too hard to do in Canvas, right? So it'll be multiple choice, but we should be able to do these by hand as well. So to write the equation of a circle, we need a center and a radius. So the center would be right here. The coordinates of that point right there are -3, 2. And my radius right there would be 3. So, Rylan, how would I write an equation for that?
X plus 3 squared
Perfect.
plus 2 minus 3.
Second equation is going to have the y in it. Y minus 2 squared. And that will equal almost 3 squared. You got to square that radius. So 3 squared would give us 9 right there. And type that into Desmos. See if it's the same circle, right? So if it's not the same circle, you've messed something up and you need to mess with it again. Also, these are going to be multiple choice. So even if you have no clue how the equation matches the circle, you can graph each circle and see which one matches, right? For that. So if we look at number 8, who can tell me what the center of number 8 is? Give me the coordinates of that center. 0, 4. I believe that is correct right there at 0, 4. Okay. Rhett, what's the radius? 5 right there. So if we are going to write the equation of this one, Isaac, what would the equation look like? Square. Not plus. Again, I let you get away with the plus right there on the first one because it was 0. I would have done x minus 0, but it doesn't matter because 0 doesn't have a sign. You have to use the opposite sign. So since that's a positive 4, we need a negative 4 right there. So use the opposite sign of whatever your coordinate is. And what would that be equal to, Isaac? 25. Perfect. You do not, and on multiple choice, it's probably not going to be there. So it will look like this, x squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 25. I would prefer, actually, to see this, but it's still fine if you put that 0 there. Okay, questions? All right. Okay, I need to change this point right here because this ends up being one that is not whole numbers, and without it being multiple choice, I wouldn't ask you to do this one as it is. So change that 0.74 right there to 94. In fact, let me do, instead of marking it out, let me do that. Alright, why is the escape button? Oh, there we go. Okay. Let me fix it on here as well so it won't be wrong next time. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so we're changing that to 9-4, and this one asks us for, and I'm going to pull up Desmos here because this one is different, right? It's a little more complicated. It says the center of a circle is at 910, and the point 94 is on the circle, so they didn't give us a radius this time. They did give us the center, which takes us a long way, because I know the first part of this equation is going to be x minus 9 squared plus y minus 10 squared. What I don't know is what that's going to be equal to, right? So if we go over here to Desmos, Desmos graphs points really easily. Oops, don't put 900. Put 910 and 94 into your graph, and right there they are, 910 and 94, and I can write on my screen, so I am going to say that this is the center, because that will matter when I'm trying to work with this problem, right? So, to do this, there's a few things that you can do. I'm going to type in my equation, x minus 9 squared plus y minus 10 squared equals, I don't know what that radius is supposed to be necessarily, so there's a couple of things you could do. If this is the center, then the circle goes around this way, right? So I've got, this circle looks not exactly like that, but kind of close. So what would the radius of that circle be? 6. So I can count it, and I would have 6 squared right here, which is 36, and then I can erase my ugly circle and see that that works right there. So this over here should be 36. Here's another option for you. Let's say that you didn't realize that you could count that. You can do r squared right here and tell it to add a slider. And then you can change it until it goes through that point, which happens right there at 6, so that your radius is 6 there. This would be more helpful if it was like a point over here that didn't actually go through the point exactly. So, and most of the time these are multiple choice, so you can just type in your answer choices and see which one matches. Okay, questions there? All right, so 10 tells us that we've got that should say points. These points are endpoints of the diameter of a circle. What's the equation? So this does not give us a center. So I'm going to graph these points, -3, 3, and 5, 3. And I'm going to move over here so I can see them both, right? These are endpoints of a diameter, right? Which means that goes all the way across the circle, which means the circle should roughly look something like that. So where would the center be? What would the coordinates of center be on that? 1, 3. Right there. 1, 3 should be my center. What's the radius going to be? Right here. That's 4. Right there. So my equation should be x minus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4 squared. And you can see I'm going to erase my ugly circle now. And you can see those are the endpoints of that diameter. That center looks the right place. This is the correct answer. So that's what we would have for this one. We would have x minus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 16 for that 4 squared. And these will be even easier if they're multiple choice for that. All right, questions so far? Okay. All right, so these next ones ask us to go backwards from what we've been doing. They ask us to find the center and the radius. So it's really very straightforward to find it from the equation as long as it is in standard form. However, you can always graph these if you need to. So if you've forgotten things or you're confused, type it in. And in fact, that sometimes helps a lot. So for this one, Miles, what should the center of number 11 be? If we've got x minus 5 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 64, what should the center of that be? Good. And the graph can help because if you type in 5, 1, check to see if it looks like it's the center, right? That does look like it's the center. So our center there is 5, 1. And then our radius, this number right here is not our radius, right? On that picture, our graph did not have a radius of 64. What would the radius be for this? Okay, what's it going to be, Isaac? 8. Right there. Because we need to take the square root of that. That number has been squared. To undo squaring something, we square root it. Everybody good there? And you can always double check. So, let's see. Silas, what's the center of number 12 going to be? -7, +2. And then they ask us for diameter, but they're trying to trick us again by asking for diameter. Let's find the radius first. What would the radius of this be? Or how could we find it? Isaac? 18. How did you get 18? Good. 324, we're going to take the square root of it. Because this number has been squared, we have to square root it to get the radius. So if my radius is 18, Isaac, what's the diameter going to be? Good. And that would be 2 times 18 would give us 36. Okay. Presley, what would the center of 13 be? That is like an x minus 0 there. So it would just be 0 for that x coordinate. 0, -10. Perfect. This one's a little trickier. Paloma, what would I get for my radius here? Well, radius is not going to be 13. Radius is 6.5. Because we will take the square root of 42.25 and we will get 6.5. This one's trying to trick you also. It's got the diameter, so if we double that, that will be 13. So you're giving me the answer there. Good. Okay, questions? Adriellis, what would the center of 14 be? Good. Perfect. Okay. Laura, what would we do to find the radius on that one? Good. We will square root that 58. And what is the square root of 58? 7.62-ish or something like that, right? I think definitely on like the stuff on the quiz, most of it I think I've just done 1 decimal place on this quiz because there's a little room for error on some of them. So this will not be on today's quiz. On the test, though, 1 decimal place, I think, is what I've done for that. Okay, questions? All right, we got a couple more, or 4 more to look at real quick. And 15 says the center of a circle is located at negative 1, 4. The circumference of that circle is 6 pi. What is the equation of the circle? So they gave us the center. I know I'm going to have x plus 1 squared plus y minus 4 squared, but I don't know the radius. They gave me circumference. What is the formula for circumference? There were two different ones we could use. What was it, Isaac? 2 pi times the radius. Or you could use pi times diameter if you want, but for this problem we need radius, so this would be good to use. So if I know the circle, it has a circumference of 6 pi, and 2 pi r is my equation for that. I want to find r, so I just need to divide both sides by 2 pi. And so for this, the 2 pi's cancel. The pi's also cancel because I have a pi on top and pi on bottom. This is just going to be 6 divided by 2, which is 3 for my radius. So my radius there would be 3, and that means I would have a 9 right here. Now, it's a little hard to check that one on Desmos because you can't really find the circumference on Desmos, but you could at least type it in and make sure your center is correct for that. 16, we are going to have to do completely with Desmos. There is a way to do 16 by hand. I'm going to make that pretty small so you'll not be able to see it. Technically we are supposed to be able to do 16 by hand. However, they do not ever ask any questions where you have to be able to do it by hand. They'd have to have a calculator in an active section to do that. So, for the sake of time, we are not going to learn how to do those by hand. So all of those equations right there, you're not going to be able to do it by hand or just by looking at it. Like if they had put these in vertex form, we could tell, right? We could tell the center and the radius, but you cannot tell here. But the good news is, if you type this into Desmos, x squared plus 8x plus y squared minus 2y equals negative 13, it'll graph it for you. This was a huge deal whenever they started letting us use Desmos because those calculators will not graph a circle. So the fact that this will graph a circle like this makes this so much easier to deal with for these problems. So is this one correct? Does it have a center at negative 1, negative 4? No, definitely not, right? So A is not it, right? Have you guys tried the rest of these? You guys try some different ones. Maybe some of you skip to the bottom and see which one will work. We'll figure out faster. It takes a little while to type these all in, but there should be an obvious answer once you type them in. Not B. It's not A. It's not B. D. Let's check. I think you're probably right. X. Let me get rid of this one. That one didn't work. So x squared plus 2x plus y squared plus 8y equals negative 13. If you do this, like, if it doesn't graph a circle whenever you do this, like, I mean, that graphs a circle, but it's wrong. Make sure you type in x's and y's correctly. Like I almost put an x for that second one. If it's not in perfectly, you won't be able to tell. But this one has a center at negative 1, negative 4. It has a radius of 2. So D would be the correct answer. Yes? That one is, so these are not put in vertex form, right? So for that to be radius, that x minus, like, this would be x plus 1 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 4. Like, that is the correct equation. If they were in vertex form, we could just pick it from the list. These are not in vertex form. They don't have the parentheses with the square. So, so you cannot pick them based on what they're equal to for that. So that's like a distractor they put there on purpose to try to confuse you. So you have to graph them to tail for that. So if you see the parentheses and the squares, then they're in vertex form and you can just look at it. But if they're not written like that, you're going to have to graph them all. All right, just really quick, because you're not going to do much of this right here. Here, the last two right here, I'm just going to do one of them. It says, the circle given by this intersects the line blank at. This is totally Desmos. If you see something like this, x minus 4 squared plus x plus 5 squared, oops, type it in right, squared equals 36. Next line, y equals 2x minus 5. Right here, it is going to graph. Why is mine not graphing? I put the x twice. That has to be a y right there. There we go. And it wants to know that where they intersect. So I would have negative 1.354. Negative 1.354. What was that? There. Negative 7.708. And then I'd also have this point up here, 2.954 and 0.908. Okay, so it is just graphing it and see where they cross for that. If we look really quickly at the next one, you've got that first one is going to be a circle. Hopefully. Yep, that first one is a circle. The second one is negative 15. I'm sorry, negative 1 over 5 x plus 12 over 5. And it asks us at how many points do they intersect? How many times do those intersect? Just once. Just at that point right there. Right there. So just one time for that. So you're just graphing them and seeing what happens for that. Okay. Questions? All right.